Hello everyone. Welcome to another stream. How's it going? Happy weekend. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to make sure everything is working in the system as expected. Yeah, it seems like it. Good. So, today we are going to look into something interesting. This is going to be a 10x developer stream. So, we are going to try to build something that we have heard of before, but might not have had a chance to do or to build ourselves. And we're going to look into how we can do this effectively. We're going to look into if we should be using VS Code, Cursor, or maybe NeoVim to code this. And then we are also going to be having question answers as well, just like always. So first of all, welcome, and let's take it from there. So I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a bit as well, so you have an idea of what we are doing today. All right. Cool. So this is what we are looking at, actually this. So we are looking at building our own Kafka in JavaScript / TypeScript. We'll see how that goes. But I just want to share that we have CodCrafters as a platform where you can learn all of these things. You have the opportunity to build your own Redis, your own HTTP server, your interpreter, your own shell or terminal, your own Git for that matter. And the really nice part is that in all of those, you do have a lot of languages that you can pick from. So TypeScript, JavaScript, blah blah blah, a lot of things. And I think it's going to be really interesting to level up developer skills, so to say. And what you can also do is you can also join the platform, and I'm going to try to find the link as well to give it to you, and hopefully I can find it now. Yeah, I'm going to share that in the chat as well. So there you go. So if you want to join the platform, you can follow this link that you see in the chat. Having said that, let's actually start building. Interesting. I see a weird window on my left screen which should not be there, and it prevents me to see anything at all. Opens as a from screen capture. System tray, hide cursor over project says blah 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 blah. I want to make sure my OBS is always on top. Okay, regardless, let's start building. So let's have a look at, or actually let me try to see if I can close this window. Is this a stream deck or is this something else? Okay, let's see. So what are we looking at? So first of all, Kafka, if you don't know, is one of the tools that is used for event streaming, and we usually do this if we don't want to block our main threads of our server, especially for example when you're working with JavaScript. So you have a request response cycle between the front end and the back end, or between a back end and other microservices, for example. But the Apache Kafka is essentially an event streaming platform that is used for data pipelines or heavy traffic. And one of the best thing is that you can build a subscriber publisher architecture in which you can publish your topics or publish your data to specific topics, and the subscribers can then react to it. So instead of going into a lot of theory that I think you can study on your own, we're going to just jump right into coding, and we are going to see how we can take it from there. So before I do that, I'm going to quickly restart my Chrome because I think it's causing a bit of trouble to me. So give me 1 second while I restart my Chrome. But in the meantime, if you're working on anything interesting, feel free to share in the chat, and if you want me to review as well, feel free to do so. I'm going to restart Chrome in the meantime. Restore. Thank you. And Let's see if I have everything in. Yeah, now it seems good. So we're gonna go back to it. Good. Awesome. So let's begin. So pre-challenge assessment, preferred language, which language do you want to use? I'm gonna go with JavaScript in this one. And let's see. So we have language proficiency. I think I can go with advanced. And this is really nice because you can, I'm assuming since they're asking all of this, it is gonna be interesting on how they develop the whole experience for beginners versus intermediate versus advanced, so to say. So here, further you must, if you got stuck, you can use our code sample feature to see the code from other users. Okay, cool. How often do you intend to practice? Learners that maintain a consistent cadence, most likely to meet their learning objectives. I would say once a week, given my personal things that I'm doing. Would you like us to email? Yeah, I would say. And let's go. So we prepped a starter repository with some JavaScript code for you, clone the repository, and then we'll take it from there. So I'm going to copy this and let's try this in new Vim. I know I'm going to fail quite a lot, but I think it still is going to be interesting experience. So let's get this set up. And is it not full width? This is full width. Yeah. Okay. So let's go with YouTube, or actually personal. Or do we have experiments? No, we don't. So personal is fine. So here we can git clone, and then we just need to open this. And let's have a look at, whoop. So let's open this. And now we have push an empty commit. Why do we need to push an empty commit? Okay. Okay, because they are creating this. Okay. I was confused a bit. So they have created my own repository for this. Interesting. And then I'm just pushing something empty. Interesting. Really nice. So let's try to, because I thought I would have to create my own repository for this, but that's good. So here I can then say git commit allow empty test, and here I can do git push origin master. Good. I want to see what they are saying here. So I can see the CodCrafters logo running in test on your code. Logs should appear shortly. Interesting. And then looks like your program has terminated. Kafka server is expected to be a long running process. Has failed. Try setting debug true in your YAML to see more details. This failure is expected. Uncomment code in app main.js. This is also nice. So I don't really have to worry about if this was my fault or if everything is working fine. So this is quite brilliant, so to say. And now we have view instructions, stage vi6. Interesting. Can I open this? So how to pass this stage? Bind to a port v16. So here it says step completed. Hey, let's go. No, that was not the right one. Let's go. Good. So let's see the next stage. How to pass this stage. And this opened, or the console. I really like the developer experience from CodeCrafters, that just by pushing, I see all these messages, but on the platform as well, it's the same next step. So this is pretty nice. I'm going to close the second tab. So this is the first stage. We have included some commented code to help you get started. To pass this stage, simply uncomment the code and submit your changes. So navigate to app main.js. Then we recommend using an editor IDE. Yeah, okay. So then, and I can also mark these steps as completed. So, okay. So we are supposed to navigate to app main.js, which is this one. And here you can see we have some. You can use print statements as follows for debugging. They will be visible running tests. So uncomment this block to pass the first stage, which is net.create server connection, handle connection. Okay, interesting. So, and here we have, okay, interesting. So import net from net. is this something that we have already installed in the packages? Because I don't see. Okay, I have the hidden items, so we should have. We don't have a node, a package JSON, or we don't have node modules installed. I'm wondering if that's gonna come next, maybe. But here, at least we can go and enable this thing. Oops, oops. So let's get rid of this guy and save. Okay. So I will say mark this as completed. And here they are saying uncomment this guy, uncomment this as well. Okay. Mark is completed. Submit the changes. Now I'm supposed to push this, so I'm not running anything locally still. Interesting. I'm going to copy this and let's go here and let's run this. So now this is pushing and this is running the test as well. Let's see. Hey, look at that. Test passed. So this ran your program.sh, running the test for stage v16, binding to a port, and then this is actually done. Now we can move to the next step, which is this one. So I can click here, or I can just go to from my console. But I'm already interested in seeing what is in the your program.sh. So here it just says exec node app main.js. And if you go to main.js, it just ensures that nothing fails. Interesting. Do they have some tests here as well? Not particularly. So they're using Node.js 21. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let's proceed. Let's proceed forward. So let's go to main.js, and we can also say, let's close this one. Okay, so let's mark this port as, or step is completed. View the next stage. So we go forward. How to pass this? In this stage, you'll implement your own solution. Unlike stage 1, your repository doesn't contain commented code to pass this stage. 98% of users who attempt this stage completed. Nice. So expand. The Your Task card below contains a description of what you need to implement to pass the test. We also recommend taking a look at Code Examples tab, which contains code examples from other users. So if I click this, where this take us? So code examples using JavaScript is the same. Is it this? Okay, so it's the same thing like here. So this is from the other people. Okay, interesting. So expand, mark this as completed. The instructions are ready to implement your solution. So your task card below contains the description. Let's have a look. In this stage, you'll send a response with a correlation ID. Kafka brokers communicate with clients through Kafka wire protocol. If I click this takes me to the Kafka documentation. Okay, interesting. The protocol uses a request response model where the client sends a request message and the broker replies with a response message. The Kafka response message has 3 parts: message size, header, and body. Okay, I think the message size basically is used for working with the streams. So we know when the body has, or when we have had multiple responses combined together using the message size. Interesting. For this stage, you can ignore the body, just focus on the message size and header. You'll learn about the response bodies in the later stage. Okay. So message size, the message size is 32-bit signed integer. It specifies the size of the header and the body. For this stage, the tester will only assert that your message size is 4 bytes long. It won't check its value. You'll implement correct message size in later stage. Okay. Kafka has a few different header versions. The way Kafka determines which header version to use is a bit complicated, and it is outside of the scope of this challenge. For more information, take a look at KIP4 and Stack Overflow answer. Interesting. In this stage, you'll response header version 0. Scroll down. It has a single value, a correlation ID. This value lets clients match responses to their original request. Here's how it works. The client generates a correlation ID. Oh, so the client generates it. Interesting. The client sends a request that includes the correlation ID. Okay. The broker sends a response that includes the same correlation ID. The client receives the response and matches the correlation ID to the original request. The correlation ID is a 32-bit integer or signed integer. For this stage, your program must respond with a hard-coded correlation ID of 7. Cool, makes sense. The tester will execute your program with this script. We already had a look at that. It will then connect you to your broker on port 9092 and send a request. So echo placeholder request, and then we can do this. Your broker must send a response with a correlation ID of 7. That is the idea. So we should get this response back. So message size 0, any value works. And here we have the correlation ID, which is 7, Okay, for this stage, you don't need to parse the request. You just learn about request parsing in a bit later stage. All integers are big endian order, which is from MDN. Okay. So this is little endian. Example with the number 0 in decimal. Okay. Big endian looks like this. Mixed endian, historic and very rare. I don't think we need to go into this at this particular moment, but would be nice to look at that later. Anyway, so now that we have looked at it and we have understood that all we need to do is to send back the correlation ID 7. That's the most important thing for this whole task. So let's mark this as completed. Now implement the solution. Head over to your editor ID, implement the solution. If you want to quick look at what functions to use and how to structure your code, we recommend looking at the code examples. So here we have the code examples using JavaScript. So some people have created correlation ID, then they are using buffer from, and then they are passing it like this. So this has to be 8 digits or 8 elements in the buffer from array and then sending it back. Someone has sent it like this. Interesting. And what other people have done? So Abhijit, let's close that. So we have this guy who has done the buffer logic. Then we've gotten this guy who has also done the buffer logic and the message length and the correlation ID. Interesting. Okay, so now I have an interesting question, and this is from CodCrafters as well. So what I'm understanding here is that the build your own Kafka is not really, it's not really a tutorial, but it's rather a challenge, and you can look at different answers from the community who has already attempted this, which makes sense. Interesting. Wa alaikum assalam, Shayan. How's it going? How are you doing? So, and then we can run the test. Good. Good. And this also depends on, for example, the level of the language that we have said. So since I've said expert, they would not provide a lot of code for me in this case. So anyways, we have the correlation ID, and then we have the buffer from, and then we also had the message length as well. So in here, we did have a look at the message size is a 32-bit signed integer. And then we also had the header. For this stage, a tester will only assert that your message size is 4 bytes. So not the value, just the size. And the correlation ID is a 32-bit signed integer. Okay. So here we are essentially sending all of this. Okay, let's implement it. So we're going to go to our code, and in here we can generate two things. We can actually start with a message length, which was 0. And then we also had a correlation ID. Let's set it to 7. And then we are supposed to create the information that we need to also send. So we are going to send it on the connection that we already have from the create server. And then we can also do connection.close as well. So let's quickly say const response equals buffer from, and here we can provide 0, 0, 0, message length for now, which was 0, and then 0, 0, 0, and then correlation ID. And once we have that, we can say connection dot write, and in here we can pass the response, and we can also say connection dot close. Is it close or is it end? I think end is the one. So we can close the connection in this case. I mean, we don't really need to be honest, because we are, or maybe, yeah, for now we can. So we're going to save this, and then we can mark this as done. So mark is complete. And now run the test. So test failed, click. Okay. So we implemented it. Now we need to just run the test. So here, we're going to say, oh, we need to install the CodeCrafters CLI. If you run with Git, then we can just push them. So I think it's better to just run it locally. So let's do installation of CodeCrafters CLI. So here, let's quickly add this. So we are adding the CLI just like this. And so we got this now, and now we can run the test. What was the tests command? CodeCrafters test. CodeCrafters test. Good. So in this case, you can see that the correlation ID 7 test passed. This is good. Submit your changes to move to the next step. So here I can just do CodeCrafters submit, and this would submit it with a push. So let's have a look at Git log for now. So here we did push with this weird message, I think. And now I can try to do submit. So CodeCrafters submit. Okay, so test pass. I want to look at the logs. So here you can see here it automatically basically creates a commit behind the scenes for us. So yeah, not too bad. Nice. Good. So mark this stage as completed. The test pass automatically. This could analyze this. So we can say click the button to move to the next step. Hey, look at this. I think I really liked it overall, the experience. Rohit Paul queries everywhere. We act on the most feedback within a week. Okay. Okay, the overall experience with the messages in the terminal and on the site is pretty neat. Great job. Okay. So we have we done this now, or view instructions? What happened here? To run the test again, do this. But my task was automatically done, or no? Okay. So now wait a second. Okay, so we have a different test now. Good. I misunderstood it. So we sent the correlation ID now in the previous one. And now we have the parse correlation ID. So in this case, we will replace the hard-coded correlation ID with the actual correlation ID from the request. So someone will do the request. We are supposed to send back the correlation ID here. We're not supposed to hard-code this one, which makes sense. So request has 3 parts: message size, header, body. To get the correlation ID, you need to find this offset. You already know that the message size is 4 bytes long. And here is what the request header looks like in this stage. We're using request header v2. So here, we're looking at request header v2. So here we have request API key, request API version, correlation ID, and client ID. And then we have a tag buffer in this case. Correlation ID is 32 signed integer. We have the client ID and request API key. So this is what essentially we are looking for. So let's have a look. So request API key is the API key for the request API version, correlation ID in 32. We have the client ID and then toggle fields, or tagged fields, sorry. To learn more about the different data types, we can look at this. So here's an example of a request message. So if we have this message coming in, this means this is the size of the whole message. Then we have this, which is the request API key. Then we have the request API version, as you can see here. And then we have the correlation ID in this case, which becomes this overall, right? So the tester will execute the program like this, program.sh, and it will then connect to your broker on this and send a request with request header v2. So it would do something like this and send the request like this. So in this case, this is the whole header that's being sent. Your broker must send a response with the correct correlation ID. In this case, we have this. For this stage, you don't need to worry about that the request is asking for. You'll handle that in the next stage. For this stage, the tester will only assert that your message size is 4 bytes long. It won't check its value. You'll implement the correct message sizes in a later stage. Okay, the request header version and response header version are unrelated to each other, so you don't have to match them. Interesting. Good. Let's have a look at what you haven't completed this. You want to view the code example? Yeah. So in this case, we are getting the data, or we can also try to see the test as well. So now we're gonna get the data, and then let's see. So we have it right here. Let's cut this, and then we can try on connection dot on, and here we have data. So we are looking at the data, and then we do a console log of the string. So here, if I do console log, and here we should receive the data as in it. So here we can say data, just to try things out. But do we have to clone anything at all? No. But the test will try to do something specific, right? So here was the command that here. So here we can try running this as well. So from this one, if I do this, but wait a second. If I go to my program.sh, right? Edit CodCrafters, run the sh to change how your program runs remotely. Yeah, but once we have this, we should also have this as well. So if I run sh, if I run sh program, your program.sh, would it do something or no? No, sorry, my bad. This should not be there. Save this and run this, and we're also gonna have nope, we should also have another one. So here we can run this. So here you can see we get the data and we get the buffer right here. So let's change our code to actually change this to a string. So here we can say const request equals data dot to string, and then here we can change this to request for now. So we save this, and then we get this out, then we get this out, then we run this again, and now we can run it like this. But did we not save our? I think I thought I saved it. Okay, so this is what we got if you look at this. So we got this whole number right here. Then we have Kafka CLI, blah, 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 and then we have some number as well. Good. So how are we parsing this? So in this case, we are getting the request API key from 0 to 2. Then we are also getting from 2 to 4. And then we are getting the correlation ID from 4 to 12. And looking at this instruction, if we look at here, so we have this as 16, And this one is 16 as well. And then we have this as integer 32. And the overall request that we are sending is actually this. And here the tester will only assert that your message size is 4 bytes long. It won't check its value. So essentially this is what it's sending. Good. Good. Okay. So we extract it out for the 4 bytes and we're looking at, let's look at some other examples as well. So, but yeah, we can extract out directly from 4 to 12 as well. But no, I want to break it down to make it look a bit easier in this case. So let's break it down. So in this case, if I want to take this out as in further broken down information, if I look at here, so we got the request API key, we got the request API version, and then we have the rest of the stuff. And what we have here is this. So we got 2, 3, 4, and then we got this, and then we got the rest of it. So let's convert this into, we can say const request API equals data.subArray, and we get from 0 to 2. And I want to individually log a lot of things here. And then we have const, I think that was the API key, request API key. Was it request API key and version? Sorry, API key, version, and that's going to be data.subArray from 2 to 4. And then we should also have const correlation ID equals data.subArray 4 to 12. And then we can log these, all of these. So request API version, key, and we have correlation ID. So we do this, and then we can, then we can take it from there. So let's save this. We're gonna run this program again, and we're gonna execute this again. So in this case, we have the request API key, which is a buffer that looks like this, 00. Then we have 0023, which is the version 23. And then we have the correlation ID, which looks like this, as you can see, or including actually this one as well. So if we look at the data that they have mentioned here as well, that the correlation ID is of 32 signed integer, and this is gonna be or the message that we have is gonna be of 4 bytes. So in this particular situation, we are getting it actually from here, if I understand correctly. So let's try to return this in from our server. So here we can say connection dot write, and here we can just say correlation ID. I'm going to then test it as well. So let's try to do this and do connection dot end. So what I'm gonna do now is CodCrafters test. Good. So all of our tests are passing right now. So we got the logs, and sending API version 4, request correlation ID 7. So in this particular case, we got the correlation ID 7, but is it running our code as well? Let's see. Did it pass already? Yeah, so the parsing correlation ID test runner already passes now. You can either refactor your code or move to the next step. Then we can submit this and take it from there. But I also want to look at some other examples as well. So let's look at what this guy has done 2 days ago. So we have data.length being checked. It's greater than, it should be greater than 12. Then what we do is we read, okay, unsigned integer set to be. Interesting. This is the correlation ID. This is the data. Then you're doing a buffer alloc. You're writing to the response. What? And you're taking the correlation ID and you're taking the 4 bytes out of it. And then you're sending it back. Interesting. But no. So a lot of cases have actually done it like this. But I do want to understand some other solutions as well. So we have the message length that we are taking our first byte for the length. Okay. Then we are taking from 0 or 2 to 4. So this was 2 bytes for the API key. Interesting. Then we are doing data read int 16be. Then we are getting 2 bytes for the API version. And then we are taking 4 bytes. I want to look at this actually. What is the buffer method that does it? So the buffer unb, no, I didn't want this in Swedish. Translate for me, please. Close, close, close. Nej, no svenska. Galska. Okay, so we have buffer is a method that is an inbuilt application programming interface for the class buffer within the buffer module, which is used to read 32-bit value from an allocated buffer at a specific offset. So this is interesting. So then it reads 32 bits from offset 0 parameters. This method accepts a single parameter offset which specifies the number of bytes to skip before reading, or simply signify the index in the buffer. The value of the offset lights 0 to offset to buffer length. Its default value is 0. I think this is actually much nicer. Okay. So if we have this buffer right there, we can actually take that buffer and then we can start reading from 0 to 1, 2, 2, and 3. Interesting. I want to run this now. So let's go to app. Oh, actually, we are there. I want to try this. So let's close this. Let's run node. App main js. So this is what we have got after reading it. So we've gotten a buffer which looks like this, right? It's 21, 9, 19, 98. So here 21, 9, 19, 98. So we have gotten all of this in our buffer. So printing the allocated buffer, that's good. Abuzar Khan says, hello sir, I have a question. I'm in final year and as a final year project, I'm building HRMS, HR management system. Or I make some multiple services. Okay, what's your question? Where's the question? So, okay, so we start reading from 0 and we read 32 bits from this. So here we do have exactly. So we are reading 32 bits from 0, which ends up being this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So each each number is then presented in that particular manner. So we got 32-bit data there. And then we are also doing it from this one. But we are also converting that to toString 16 as well. I don't want to do that. Not at the moment. So let's do it here, here, here. And I'm gonna stop this. Okay, so just, okay, so in this case, this is not really the 16-bit representation or the base 16 representation for this, which kind of makes sense. So we got this buffer, but that changes into this. Put this back, run this again, and there we go. This is much better. Okay, so with that said, let's move forward. Or maybe let's try to do this actually. So instead of our implementation, I'm gonna go with the right implementation. So not doing the sub array thingy in this case. So we can then use the these variables instead. So we had 4 bytes, 2 bytes, 2 bytes, and 4 bytes. So we gotta do data dot read. Is it read unsigned integer? And then it's 4 bytes. So we are going with the 32 bits. So here we got int 32be. We start from 0. So we went with the request API key for 4 bits, right? Sorry, for 32 bits. Then we went with read unsigned integer 32 from, then we're gonna go from 2, and then we should request API key. Are we going for, okay, no, we should be going from 4, sorry, otherwise it would be 16 instead. So we gotta go with 4, and then correlation ID. Oh, is there also time? Okay. Okay, let's wait for a while. I'm also gonna read the questions in the meantime. Abuzer says, like employee service department positions and attendance and some more services. I want you to give me some tips about project service. Like I have to assign project to manager, and then manager will assign that project to employees. Can you give me tips on how I can do that? Okay. So you have a concept of users and projects in this case. So you can have something like a project, I don't know, just have in your database, you can have something like a project. Let's see if I can find it. So you have your project, which can have its ID, blah blah blah, name, but then you can also have the owner ID in this case. So owner ID is the one who created this. Maybe you create the project, so you can be the owner, and then you can also have an assignee ID, and this can be the user. So if in the case of your user, they would have ID, name, company ID, which company do they belong to, and then you can have other attributes as well. But essentially, the owner ID is going to be a user ID, and the assignee ID is also going to be a user ID, if that makes sense. So if you are creating a project and you assign it to, let's say, an employee or a manager, then the assignee ID would change to manager. And then if the manager assigns it to the employee, the assignee ID would just change to the employee, if that makes sense. So this is at least how I would do it. I'm not really sure about the context of your app, so I don't think I can help much more than what I just said. Okay, so we got 2 bytes for API key and then 2 bytes for the API version. Interesting. So we wait a second, but we also had the message length as well, right? So this is supposed to be not request API key, message length. And then this should be request API key. That should be data.read uint16 be, and you start from here. No, not from 2, again from 4, and then we read 2 bytes from there, and then we read 2 bytes from here, and then from the correlation ID we can then read an unsigned integer of 32-bit from 8. I think that should still be working. So then we can have the message length here as well. So can have message length and request ID, etc., etc. Have I done this correctly? So we got here, we got 4 bytes, got here 2 bytes, we got here 2 bytes, and here we got 4 bytes. Right? And then we don't really need the data property. No problem, Abuzar, happy to help. Okay, so let's then try to do this again. And let's try to make this call again. So in this case, we got the message length is 35. We got the request API key, which is this one. Then we got the correlation ID, which is this one. But then it says, okay, we also need to make it to string in this case. So the correlation ID to string, T string to string. And let's see this. And let's run this again. So now we should be good. And when we send back the result, so they are essentially converting everything. Read the client ID, but we don't really need to do that. When we have our response back, we say we are writing, okay, interesting, to the response, okay. But do we need to also have the length and the correlation ID? So we do buffer allocation, 4 bytes for correlation ID. Aha, okay. So basically writing the message length, and then we have the correlation ID. Interesting. Interesting. Hmm. Okay, but I think we'll read about that more when the time comes. So let's move forward. I'm gonna have CodCrafters test to see if I still am passing all the tests. Yeah, so expected to this, but we got this. So something is wrong in this case. So the correlation ID that we have gotten back is not accurate because we are actually writing this, but we should be writing the buffer then. And we're sending back the data that is about 8. I think. No, not that. When we are writing it back, we are starting with 0. So we do have a 32-bit data written there, and then we have the correlation ID that we send. And I also want to see like what is the meaning of the other side of it, but let's do that. So we start with response equals, we have buffer.alloc, and here we say 8. So in this case, I also want to have a look at, so we have memory alloc or buffer alloc with size of the number, allocates the buffer of size bytes. So it is sending it to be 8 bytes as a response, and 4 bytes should be the correlation ID. So we have to then send a message of 4 bytes or something, and then we have to have the correlation ID for 4 bytes, which makes sense to me. So here we can say response dot write uint 8 uint 32 be. So here we do, and we can just write 0, which means that it's just going to write any particular thing. And then we have to do this again, but with actually correlation ID. So response dot write and 32 be. And when we do, what is the difference between this one and the other one, right? So we have a small one and then we have a big one. Interesting. Okay, anyways, so we have correlation ID, and then we can have the other thing. So here we should have capital I. Let's try this again. A user says, after completing my project, I have to deploy it using DevOps culture for monitoring. I will use Prometheus and Grafana. Is my project good because I'm alone? I have no partners in the project. I would suggest to find someone if you can. That would be better than working alone. But in theory, it seems good. I mean, it depends on what your end goal is. So I can't really say if it's good or not. But as a concept, it seems okay to me, to be honest. So here, so we got the correlation ID back, and then here you can see we get the response back with the correlation ID, which is this one, right? We also get this back, which is okay, I think. So let's try this now. Hey, all the tests passing. Good. Okay. So I want to look at this again. Excavalon, if I pronounce it correctly. I'm building my own Kafka using a platform called CodCrafters, which seems really nice so far because it allows me to look at the code examples from the other people following a challenge that I'm currently attempting. So this whole challenge would end up in me having my own sort of Kafka implementation for event streaming using JavaScript in this case. And if you're interested in getting, I can also try to find the link to share as well that you can have a look at. So if I copy this, and I can share this in the chat as well. So if you want to join CodeCrafters, you can do this. And it seems really nice because there's so many things that I did not experience myself, even after working with Node.js for quite a long time. And my camera just died. But now I can actually look into this. I think it's gonna strengthen my understanding of how the data is being transferred on the server side, so to say. So that's pretty nice, pretty neat. Okay, so we got the tests passing. I think we can move to the next round. So this is what we wanted at the end. Good. And now we can submit it. So we would have our next step. So here I can say CodCrafters submit. And this was submitted. So is this something project-based learning website? Yes. It's more or less, you can call it in a way that you build your own things from scratch using the bare minimum. So it's like building your own Redis client, building your own interpreter, building your own shell, your own Git. So all of this is project and challenge based, and the really good nice part is that you can pick your own language or your own choice of programming language. So I'm very confident, or I'm pretty good with JavaScript or TypeScript. So I'm attempting it in this one, but you can also see all the other languages that are available. So it's pretty neat. And the good part that I saw before even is it's really nicely integrated with the CLI. So you can use the CodeCrafter CLI to push things. For example, I just run some commands and it also generates the, for example, git log for me as well with what's going on. So I don't have to do much and I can focus on my learning as expect. Abuzar says, I have approached many friends in university, but they are always tell me like it's difficult to complete it. So that's why. Yeah, again, it really depends if you really have the time to do it and when do you have to submit it. But as a concept, like, is this useful? I think, yeah, your project is okay. It can be useful for sure. Alrighty, so we completed this stage. Let's go forward. So this one parse the API version. So we parsed the correlation ID before. Now we can parse the API version. In this stage, you'll parse the API version field from the request and respond with an error if the version is unsupported. We are still working on the instruction for this stage. You can find notes on how the tester works below. In the meantime, please use this link to ask questions on the forum. Okay. So the testers will still run this command. Then it will connect to the server and send an API versions request. This will include an invalid API version, for example, -1212334. Any version other than 1234, 101, 2, 3, and 4 should be considered invalid version. Okay, your server should respond with an error code of 35, unsupported version. Interesting. The tester will validate that the correlation ID in the response header matches the correlation ID in the request header. Yeah, of course. The error code in the response body is 35. The test won't validate the first 4 bytes of your response. The message length in this stage. We'll get to that later. Okay, that's fine. Notes, the API version request will be sent in an invalid API version, examples -1 or 1234. Okay, so those are just the examples. Okay, good. Let's have a look at the code block. So we already were extracting out the here we were already extracting out the request API key. So we need to test if when they send it, actually let's go to the instructions. So when they send it, do they have an example of the API version that they're sending or not? Let's have a look at the forum as well. So that's what I was saying, that I mean, you have a forum, you can ask questions. So this is pretty nice. Abuzar says, fun fact, I have completed half and still 7 ones remaining. Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. So you have plenty of time. Excavalin says, I'm new to your channel. I see you are an Angular developer. Is it hard to learn Angular compared to React? In terms of complexity, I don't think so. In terms of time, yes, but then you are also comparing two different things. React is a really tiny library. So just learning React is not as difficult. But when you look into when you need to build an application with React, then you also need to look into other libraries like, you know, Axios for HTTP calls, how to write tests. When we talk about Angular, we are not only talking about how to code in Angular as in creating components and whatnot. When we talk about Angular, we are learning a framework. Angular is not a library, so it takes a bit more time to understand how Angular works. In terms of difficulty, not difficult at all. And if you're still confused, I would encourage you to look into a recent crash course that I published. Maybe you have already looked into it, but it's going pretty well. So I'm gonna share the link in the chat. So here you have it. You see there. So look into the crash course. In 90 minutes, you'll have an idea of what Angular is and how to actually build an app with Angular, and you'll see that it's not difficult at all. On the other hand, if you're looking into more thorough understanding of the concepts and a wide range of learning the Angular ecosystem, because for me, with the experience I have with Angular, it's not difficult at all for me to build a medium scale application, a small scale or medium scale even, because I know what to code. I know when to use a pipe or a service or, you know, a directive, how to configure things with values or providers or class providers, value providers. So there are a lot of things. So Angular is a framework that has a lot of knowledge, but once you get a hold of it, it's really easy to just start building applications. I was saying if you need a more thorough understanding of Angular, you can look at this Angular Cookbook that I published last year, but this is always updated with the latest versions. And now we have Angular 19 coming up, so it's going to be, the code is going to be up to date with that as well. There may be a few topics missing from the new ones, of course, because I've already written the book, it's published, but still you'll get the core concepts. And it's quite likely that if you work in an enterprise company, you're not really working on the latest and the greatest Angular version. You still need all the information in those cases about the core Angular concepts that may be not a new feature, but actually related to the Angular version that you're working on. And here, I think one of the best things that you can do is, I'm going to share the link with the chat as well. And this is a pretty recent feature that I implemented in the Angular Cookbook website, is you can chat with AI and you can ask questions from it. For example, you can go and say, how to implement route animations, for example. And if you ask it just generic questions as well, you will get the response on how to actually implement route animations in Angular, but then you'll also get a reference from the book as well. So for example, here it gives you an answer of how this is how you implement. You need to configure route animations by passing the transition state, blah, blah, blah. But then it also mentions where you can find this in the book itself. So it's from the chapter 4, which is understanding Angular animation. And here you can see the recipe. So the book is comprised of a lot of recipes. So you have a problem, like how to implement route animation, then you have steps to follow. And once you are done with those steps, and every recipe is project based. And once you're done with that step, you have a final state with where the problem is solved. For example, if I look at this demo right now, this is how you would see the route animation. So you can see the shiny whoop coming in. So yeah, have a look at the cookbook if you are more interested. And you can also obviously look at the source code as well, just like this. So this is chapter 4, route animations. And then here you can see, and this, I think this is the final, yeah, this is the final folder. So we have start folder and final folder. And when you look at the final folder, you can actually see like how to implement animations. So these are Angular animations. And Angular has native support for animations as well. Xcavalon says, that's cool, man. I'm a React developer anyway. Keep hearing about Angular, yet never try. Yeah. Try with the crash course, I would say. And then you'll see a lot of things as well. So I'm hoping we can have some more in-depth tutorials going on. There's something that I was working on before that was an e-commerce Angular application. But then there's also one interesting project that I think I have done halfway. It's a real-time collaboration or real-time collaborative platform, like, for example, Notion or Google Docs, but not obviously on that scale, but a bit smaller. So yeah, have a look at that. Abuzar says, in model, and the model will... sorry, I missed your message above. Yeah, sometimes it's useful because this project will implement resume screening using NLP. So if HR posts a job, they will receive CVs and they will screen it, like we'll put some keywords. Interesting. In model, the model will screen resume and will pick a resume which meets the requirements of the job. Interesting. Once it's done, I think it's going to be really nice, especially if it uses NLP. So for sure. Okay, back to the code. So in here, we are looking at the request API version, which is 4 in this case. So we are already reading that, right? And here we can send back with the response header. I'm not really sure what is the key or what is the property that we need to send the response with, but let's have a look. So in this case, we are supposed to send back the exact result, but not with the when the version is not from 0 to 4. So let's check that. So if the request API version is less than 0, or if request API version is greater than 4, I think it was from 0 to 4, right? Then we need to do something else. Otherwise, we're gonna use this. So let's save this, and we're gonna use we're gonna say connection dot we have what do we have as a status for this one? Let's have a look at the code example. So where are we setting the status? So okay, so this is the status. So we have the correlation ID, and at the end we are setting The status, interesting. I want to also look at some other examples. Okay, so we are essentially writing, yeah. Okay, so 2 bytes for status, and we have 4 bytes of correlation ID, if I remember correctly. Or it's no, this is also I mean, you could do it, and we are taking subarray, so it's a combination of different things. So what we can do here is, if we have, but shouldn't we just say, no, we should not be actually sending any correlation ID in that case as well. So here we can say const response equals, and here we can say buffer dot alloc. I think it's, even if it's 4 bytes, this should, I don't know. Let's see. So we can do write, and then we can write response. But I also want to say response dot write uint, and it was 2 bytes for status, if I remember correctly. But we also have to have a message of 4 bytes as well. I want to look at the first example. So in this case, we do write the correlation ID that we get from here. But why do we, this doesn't make sense. Anyways, so we are writing a uint 8 array with this. Now we can go ahead with uint 16 be, and we can write here 35 and check it out. Let's see. Excavations. Okay, I read that. Thanks, Asmbai, for giving time. Maybe in the future, if you're online, I will need some tips once again. No problem at all. See you later. And then we can do a return. Okay, so let's try this out. So we're gonna say CodCrafters test. I really like their platform since they compilation test. Okay, so here we have the request API version, which is this, right? And then we received, okay, so we are actually getting 4 bytes, but we got 0 bytes because we then have to write, okay. So then we also have to write there as well. Let's have a look. So in here, we are writing 16BE35, but we also are supposed to write the, should we also write correlation ID as well? That was not in the instructions. So let's see. Your server should respond with an error code of 35, unsupported version. The tester will validate that. The correlation ID in the response header matches. Sorry. So the correlation ID also needs to be there. So I did not read it correctly. So in this case, we can actually simplify this a bit, and we can actually cut this, and we can come here. No, we can't do that. So in this case, let's still allocate 8 here. Then we are going to say response.write and we should have 16BE, and we should be writing first correlation ID or correlation ID, if I understand this correctly, and if I read the other guy correctly as well. Yeah, let's have a look. Let's try it ourselves, and then we'll see. So we are going to write it like this. So we are writing correlation ID, and then we go with 35, and then we write the response, and then we do return. Let's try this again. Okay, so we did not get that at all. The value of the value is out of range. It must be 0 and 6 5535. So we sent back more data than it was required. So we let's see. I'm missing something. What is the second parameter of writing the BE? Aha, it's the offset. Oh, okay. That's what I missed actually. So we start with this value number and then the offset and then, okay. So this should actually come after this. That's why. So we still got from the buffer out of range, which means we are not doing it correctly. If you're looking at correlation ID itself, we had it still initially there, and that means no, okay, actually this should be 32. So we do 32 BE, right? Yeah, and then we send that back. Let's try this. So API version error code in 16, and we are doing in 16 for 34, but we actually did not get this back because we are not really doing this in a 32-bit manner. But let's have a look. Let's have a look. So this should not be, I think is still, this should not be correct. So we got memory allocation ID, we got 32-bit mentioned here. Nope, doesn't work. Okay. And I don't want to do the regular one. I do want to go with the right, the buffer example with this. If it includes it, it writes it, which is the same. But in this case, it goes with allocating. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at here. So we when we start with the buffer in here, we do have the response right here. Okay, let's go bit down. Why do we need to send 6 here? That doesn't make sense. It just writes it from there, but I don't want to just write it. Or I mean, this is the easier way. Write the correlation ID, write a new buffer. If that makes sense. But I don't want to do that. I want to do it by understanding how many bytes I'm sending, and then the other things as well. So in this case, we have an allocation of 10 bytes. We have 4 bytes for correlation ID plus 2 bytes for error code. Okay. That makes sense. So this is defining the length of it, which makes sense. And then we have the correlation ID with 4 bytes that we write. And then we have this. Okay. Okay, now I understand it. I think that's much nicer overall. But the overall allocation, we have 10. Why do we have Why do we have 10? Aha, okay. Interesting. So we write about 4 bytes and then we have 6 bytes here. Then we also write correlation ID to it, which makes it okay. So 4 bytes of message length. Then we have 4 bytes for correlation ID, makes it 8, and then we have 2 bytes. Okay, that makes sense. So in this case, we should have actually message length, which is 4 bytes. Then we have correlation ID. Correlation, is it correlation? Correlation ID, 4 bytes. And then we have error code, 2 bytes. This makes sense. So this is going to be 10 bytes. Then we're going to first write the message. So response dot write 32. And the 4 bytes here would contain the number, which is going to be 6, since we have 4 and 2. Now okay, it could be, by the way, but it starts from 0. Then we're going to have a correlation ID, but we write it at the offset 4. And then we have this guy, but this is supposed to be from offset 6. And this guy needs to be 16. Okay, this should pass now. Now we have a problem. So expected the correlation ID to be this, but we got 537264163. Interesting. What are we doing that's wrong in understanding the correlation ID? Okay, let's see. So when we read our correlation ID, we have the first 4 bytes for message length. Then the request API key, is that 4 bytes also? No, so two bytes for the API key. That starts from 4, which makes sense. And then we have request API version, which is again 2 bytes, but that starts with 6. And then from 8, we read the correlation ID, right? Read, but it's, interesting. Okay. So this is not actually unsigned. This is signed. The only thing that's unsigned is message length, or at least what this guy has done. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. That I didn't know. So then if I run this again, no. So this is still being manipulated somehow, or this is changing. What changes it? Request API key was this 18, or version was this, right? So then we went ahead with correlation ID, which is this read integer 32BE. But this is what we actually read as well. Why were we not able to write it? Am I doing a mistake here? Okay. Yeah, sorry, my bad. So that's why. So this is, the message length will be unsigned. This is supposed to be signed. And this is also supposed to be signed, I think. Yeah, my bad. So this is response is supposed to be nothing. This should be signed. Okay, let's see now. Did we still get it wrong? Why? And here we've gotten 5078. Here we've gotten 5078. Got this. Why? Doesn't make sense. So write in 32BE. What am I doing wrong? 4 bytes message length, 4 bytes, 2 bytes this. So we allocate 10. We use unsigned int 32BE. We use unsigned int 32BE, right? 6 and 0, 6 and 0. Then we write response.write int 32BE. So we'd go with response.write int 32BE, correlation ID, and 4. Then we write 35. This one has a problem because this should be 4. Got it. My bad. There we go. Hey, let's go. So this is good, I think. And we can see that the test passed as well. And our task is actually more or less done. And we can now submit this. So we can do this. Submit. It's really nice that I don't have to write all the commit messages all the time. There we go. And here you can see test pass, but then also this changes quite nicely. Mark stage as completed. Hey, that's good. Okay, so we have now handled API versions. I think once we are done with this, we're gonna close it for today. So in this stage, you'll implement the response body for the API versions request. So we are still working on the instructions, blah, blah, blah. And then we have, it will then connect to blah, blah, blah. The first 4 bytes of the response message length are valid. The correlation ID in the response matches. The error code in the response body is 0, no error. So we need to send the error code as well. The response body contains at least one entry for the API key 18. Okay. The max version for the API key 18 is at least 4. I did not understand this. So the tester will always send you version 4 of the API request, in addition to other checks. If extra bytes are remaining after decoding all the fields of the response body, this will be considered an error. The response body for API versions request. Okay. Interesting. So first, let's do one thing. This one is now supposed to be changed because the error now becomes a bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, right? Then I'm going to take this out, and we have 32B and this always the same. So we go here, type this above. Then we take this out, and we take this out, and we take an else here, and then we say response dot write int 16BE is gonna be 0 at offset 8. So in this case, we are still sending the error, which makes sense. And now we need to, now I think I'm gonna just run it and see what am I missing or what it is testing. Good. So here now we got the correlation ID, blah blah blah. Unexpected end of data, API versions v3 response body num API keys compact array length unsigned var int. So in this case, we are supposed to send more information back. Now I'm gonna have a look at the code. So in this case, we are buffer. This looks like generated from AI in general, but okay. So parse request header. So we got length, API key, API version, correlation ID, client ID. but there was nothing related to client ID from anyone. The code is like becoming huge now. No, I think I need to go here again. So in this stage, you implement the response body for API versions request. Okay. And this is a hard problem. Interesting. To take more than 1 hour to complete this stage. Ooh, interesting. The first 4 bytes of response are valid. The correlation ID in the response matches it. The error code in the response body is 0. Okay. The response body contains at least one entry for the API key 18. Okay. Okay, then let's do this. I'm not gonna finish it today because it says it's gonna take 1 hour. So maybe the next stream we can focus on just this thing. But I also want to look at the other ones as well. I'm just exploring. So this one is medium. This one is hard. This one is medium. Medium, hard, then hard, and then this is hard. Okay, so we have a bunch of mediums going forward. So we'll see when the time comes. But this would be nice if we can finish the build your own Kafka thingy. By having said that, thank you everyone who has joined us today. And I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care. Have a good evening or good night, wherever you are.